We said every day to him, any word on Osama? And then they said, well, wait a minute. Puts the hand over the phone and says, hey, has anybody seen Osama in the compound today? And then he got back to, no, I haven't seen it. I don't mind it if it's crazy, but it's insulting to our intelligence. So we got to stop it.
A couple of months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, you wrote a wonderful article that I've got on our website, The Two Californians.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you would share maybe a few thoughts about our Governor Moonbeam as a postmodernist governor that has been around for over 40 years.
You know, I was sitting on my little farm in Selma, and I get this phone call right before the election. Victor Hanson. Yes. Jerry Brown here. Oh my God. So, I appointed your mother to a Superior Court and Appellate Court judge, and you do it. Oh, wow. Yeah. Jerry, I'm from a Democratic family. Why are you? I said, Jerry, can I talk for 30 seconds? Okay. We have the highest basket of cash. No, we don't. I said, let me finish. Roughly 10% sales tax, 10.1 income tax. It hits you at 62,000, 46 gas tax. Property tax may be at the rate, but the assessments are so high it doesn't matter. So that basket of taxation is the highest in the country. We're losing 25 to 3,000 people per week, almost 200,000 in some years. They're being replaced by about 1,500 people per week that are in the bottom percentage of the income brackets. We have the highest paid teachers on average. We have the third lowest test scores. Only Alabama and Mississippi are lower in math and science. You want me to get, we've idled 250,000 acres and lost 350 million we're not developed. You want me to go on? And his attitude was basically Nixon went to China. So what are you going to do? You're going to go to your Democratic legislature? You're going to go to your Democratic boards and bureaucracies and tell them that? No, the only person that can deal with these people is me. And that's pretty much what the subtext was of his campaign. And now we're seeing that, he does what he's at the dance with the people who brought him there. So he's helping the unions. He just signed a bill that said 25% of all energy has to be put in solar. Nationwide, it's 1%. So I think that we're in a catharsis in California. And all of us are here because we're crazy. It's a beautiful place. We're grown here. We don't want to abandon it. But we have the sneaking suspicion that all of the liberal agenda has to play out to the full extent until people get what they wanted, and it doesn't work. And that's about where we are with the $25 billion annual debt. How can we do that when we have the world's richest agriculture, the nation's biggest port in Los Angeles, Disneyland, Napa, Silicon Valley? It's like we got this beautiful country. We had these wonderful ancestors. They built all these dams in Sierra. They built the freeway system. They built the UC, and we screwed it up for 30 years. So we got to. I think I look at it as some kind of biblical punishment.
Okay, my name is Vitaly, and I have a following question. I've been listening and...
Can you speak a little clearer?
Okay. I've been listening to the presentation you gave, and to me it sounds like there is one important side which was missing from whatever you said. And that was basically that it's not enough for a regime to be pro-American in the Middle East to gain support from Obama administration to the rebel forces against it, but it also pretty much waits on how pro-Islamic, how crazy Islamist are those rebel forces. Because if you look at Egypt, whatever guys get to the Mubarak replacement, right now they...
Could you just ask a question?
Okay, the question is, so to me it sounds like you will almost downplay the necessity of this pro-Islamic strength of the movement to gain support from American administration. So if I'm not mistaken, what was the reason for this downplayment?
I still don't know quite what your question is, but my attitude about it all is that there is economic misery in the Middle East, and there is a solution for it. We've seen it in China, we've seen it economically in China, we've seen it in South America. And there's only one solution. You have to respect private property, you have to have free market economy, and you have to have the rule of law. And politically, you have to have some type of constitutional consensual society. And to the degree that that happens, then the country prospers and there's freedom and there's less fundamentalism, there's less violence, pretty much. And we try to promote that as much as we can. And when we really try to promote it, people don't like us doing it. And when we don't promote it at all, they don't like us doing it. It's a lose-lose situation. And we've now spent $3 trillion in the Middle East, and we've lost 5,000 American lives, and we've been very idealistic, and people hate us for doing it. And so my attitude is that when we see these uprisings, we have to support those that we feel are constitutional. So what I would like to see is, if we want to go in and intervene in Libya, which I wouldn't have done at this time, but if we did, we would have had to say, who are the rebels, and we want to see their manifesto. There is no manifesto. There's no manifesto in Tunisia. There's none in Egypt. There's none anywhere. And it seems to me that everybody collectively at this particular time, it's not like going into Iraq in 2003 when we lost an aggregate of 300 people in Afghanistan and we owed $300 billion that year. This is number 3. We owe $1.6 trillion this year. We've got the debt up to $14 trillion, and we've seen the reaction toward us. And I think that there's no support for that policy. That's all I'm trying to say. There is no policy. And I don't know if that answered your question, but I'm just trying to explain what I was trying to articulate.
Well, the question was ended there.
Somebody would tell me what his question is, I'll answer it. I couldn't understand.
Hi, I'm Dr. Charles Goodman. Thank you for coming tonight, by the way. I've enjoyed your papers on the internet. My question is about the Middle East. Israel in particular, given the government of the United States' recent support of the Israeli government. I'm worried that when Iran does become nuclear, that Netanyahu will not call Barak and say, what should I do? I'm worried that they'll strike immediately, much the way they did covertly in Syria a couple of summers ago.
So you're worried that Netanyahu might strike Iran like he did in Syria?
Exactly.
And this time
I'm just curious what your thought is.
It worked like it did in Syria.
Well, it worked great in Syria, and nobody reported it in the media until 2 months later. But I'm curious what you think the Israelis will do in light of Iran becoming closer and closer to that goal.
Well, we know that the Stuxnet, the computer virus, has given them 2 years.
Right.
And there's another second generation virus that they're working on. And they know that this administration is not sympathetic to them. So they're hoping they can buy time to another administration comes in. And I guess their attitude is, and I don't want to put words into their mouth, is that there's not going to be a second Holocaust. And that when somebody says these crazy things, they're going to do all these things to them, and then they say, oh, we're just kidding. It's rhetorical, or you didn't translate the Iranian, the Farsi correctly, or this was metaphorical. You don't understand the exegesis involved. They don't care. They say this is, 65 years after the Holocaust. We've seen it happen. It's not going to happen again. And it's going to be go down. We're going to take everybody down with us if that's going to happen. And so that's why when people say, well, why do it's our responsibility? Because it's the world's responsibility. There's only 7 million Jews in Israel, and you've got this nut that 65 years after the Holocaust wants to repeat it. And the Israelis are very calmly saying, we're not going to let this happen. We're not going to let this happen. And we keep saying, oh, come on, grow up. He's rhetorical. There's a Sunni-Shia split. And we've done that. But at some critical point, and I don't know what that point is, but I have a feeling it's something after he launches a missile or they have an actual explosion, they're going to take it out. And it's going to be messy. It's going to be a big mess. I don't know any other. I don't think we're going to get involved. That's my point. I know we're not getting involved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Hanson, in your book, Mexifornia, one of my favorites, referring to the border situation and the logical disconnect that you're referring to in the Obama administration towards all things Middle East. Would you care to comment on the current situation with Mexico and the borders, open borders?
It's very strange because the first thing Obama did was, as you know, 1/3 of the border fence was finished, and he stopped it. And then he gave these soaring rhetorical speeches about comprehensive. Every time anybody says comprehensive immigration, they need amnesty. That's what he said. And the Latino community was very much in his favor. But if you look at the actual number of deportations, they're on schedule with what Bush envisioned. And he demonized, I've never seen anything like it in my life, that a president of the United States would have a head of state in Mexico on the White House lawn and demonize one of his own states, and then go to court with a foreign government to sue a state that was trying to enforce an immigration policy that the federal government had enacted. It just I think that what he's doing is he's deporting people in the context of paying back after the employer, which is fine with me. If they're breaking the law, they have to be held accountable. But he's been able to get by by placing it as an anti-employer thing, and that's one of the things. And people are very angry. Is it sustainable? I don't know, but we know a couple of things that this administration feels that there's 11 to 15 million illegal aliens, and there's 500,000 people who come across the border each year, and these are all constituents. And they, in very key congressional districts of the American Southwest, they feel that they owe a federal government who is paternalistic to them their fides. And so I think that's what the whole plan is. And the problem with it all is that, I'll just finish the answer with three things that bother me about it. One, and they're not discussed, one is that we are sending Mexico and Latin America $50 billion a year. Most of that comes to the 11 to 15 million. If you look at the amount of remittances, how in the world can we justify 25% of illegal aliens on social services when billions are leaving the economy and going to Mexico? Couldn't we just say, if you want to send money to Mexico, you have to go to a telegraph office and show you haven't taken any entitlements from the state of California? Then you can send all you want to Mexico, but how can you give somebody entitlements who's here illegally and then have them send money $2,025? It makes no sense. The second thing that makes no sense is, how can you talk about the rule of law and then have law enforcement, as in my city, that you're not allowed to ask the immigration status? It makes no sense. And then finally, we have a problem with a lot of the extreme Chicano movement because they're in a philosophical paradox. The border's crossed us, we're not going to go get all of that rhetoric, and the whole chauvinism about the history is all based on the idea that the United States did something wrong, or the United States is currently culpable. If that were to be true, you wouldn't want to be here. So you got I think what frustrates people about the immigration issue is that you see, people getting angry at demonstrations at the United States, and then angry that they can't stay here. Or as I told one of my students once that was demonstrating, I said, you're stepping on the flag of the country that you so desperately want to stay in, and you're waving the flag of the country under no circumstances you want to return to. It doesn't make sense. I know it's an emotional response, but somebody's got to explain to the Hispanic community that they're not responsible for illegal aliens, and if they want to support them in blanket political support, then they got to change the message. It's got to be integration and assimilation and pro-America, rather than you stole our land and we want to stay here, but we don't like it. It doesn't work.